الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In this week's lesson, lesson number 33 of Mukhtasar al-Quduuri, we will inshallah be touching on two topics. The first topic which we are going to look at is with regards to Babu Qada al-Fawaid, i.e. Qada prayers. And the second topic which we are going to look at, and this is quite important in my opinion, is basically those times, those awqat, when it is considered makruh tahrimi and severely disliked to pray salah. Now we will begin with the first category with regards to qada prayers. Now according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi and also the other Imams of fiqh and jurisprudence such as Imam Shafi'i, Imam Malik and Imam Ahmad, they are of the view that if somebody was to miss his prayers, which we call qada, then he will have to pray those missed prayers again. He will have to do qada of those prayers. However, Ibn Taymiyyah rahmatullah alayhi and his student Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayhi of the view that if somebody missed his prayers intentionally, there is no qada. They are of the view that he's done such a grave sin, he's done something so bad, something so unlawful, something so haram, that there is no qada for that. There is no qada for that particular prayer. The only thing he can do is at-tawbah wal-istighfar, is repent and do istighfar. But there is no qada for what he is doing. So therefore in that situation, he will miss it out, he will leave it out. However, they do go on to say that if somebody overslept or somebody forgot to pray a particular prayer, then when he remembers, he should then do qada. Whereas according to Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi and the other Imams, we are of the view that if somebody was to miss it intentionally or unintentionally, if somebody out of forgetfulness he missed it, or if somebody overslept like in the like when it comes for Fajr, then in that situation, one will have to do qada of the prayers. Now the evidence of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam doing qada of his prayers can be found in a hadith where it's narrated by, where it's found in the hadith that during the Battle of Khaybar, when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was returning, the Fajr Salah became qada in terms of the companions and the Sahabas, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam overslept. Very famous hadith. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told Hazrat Bilal anhu that you are responsible to wake us up for Fajr. But what happened? Hazrat Bilal anhu also overslept as well. So it's mentioned that when they woke up, then they proceeded a bit further, and then afterwards Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Sahabas and the companions did qada of that particular prayer. And what we can understand from this particular hadith and from this particular information, that excuse me, what we can understand from this particular hadith is that those things which are considered to be against prophethood, against the majesty of nubuwwat, then that particular action was not done by the Nabi or the Prophet himself, but it was done by a companion or a Sahaba. And those things which are not considered against the majesty and against the shan of a Nabi or of a Prophet, then it was done by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam to practically show what the companions and also the people should do in such a situation. Now, what I'm trying to imply, what I'm trying to say here is that things which are against prophethood, say like for example, adultery, na'udzubillah, drinking alcohol, and so on and so forth. Now, if Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had just said to the people that if you drink alcohol, you get lashed 80 times, if you commit adultery, if you happen to be married, you'll be stoned to death, if you don't happen to be married, then you get lashed 100 times. If Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam just said it verbally, or he said it in theory, then what could happen is, and no one did it during Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, then what could have happened after Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's death? People would not know how to implement that punishment if that did occur. So therefore, what happened during Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's time, a particular sahabi or companion or a person may have done it. But the whole purpose of him doing it is so that then the people who witnessed the punishment taking place could then narrate it to the next group of people, and the next group of people or generation could then narrate it to the next era and to the next generation all the way until now. However, and obviously because adultery, fornication, these things obviously a prophet, na'udzubillah, can never do, so it was done by a sahabi or a companion. Obviously, don't get me wrong, we won't think bad of that companion. We're not going to think low of that particular companion, because our aqidah and the aqidah and the belief of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah is that all companions, irrespective of their closeness to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, will all enter Jannah, will all enter paradise. However, those things which are not considered against the majesty of a Nabi or for a Prophet, i.e. missing a qaza, missing a prayer, but not intentionally, but because of, oversleeping or because of the difficulties of battles and wars, then because that is not considered against the majesty of prophethood, against nubuwwat, so that was done by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam himself, so that the Sahabas and the companions could learn what to do in such a situation. Now, the first text of this particular chapter tells us, وَمَنْ فَاتَتْهُ صَلَاتٌ, that if somebody missed a prayer, قَضَاهَا إِذَا ذَكَرَهَا, that he should do qada of it when he remembers, and then he goes on to say, وَقَدَّمَهَا عَلَى صَلَاةِ الْوَقْتِ, that a person should pray the qada namaz first before the prayer of that particular time. So just say, for example, if somebody missed Fajr, the ruling is that he should pray his Fajr before he prays his Zuhr. Somebody missed Zuhr prayer, then the ruling is that he should pray his Zuhr first and then afterwards, and he's doing Qadha now during Asr, he should pray his Zuhr first and then Asr. However, it then goes on to say that if a person fears that he is going to miss the namaz and the salah of that particular time as well, then he should pray the namaz or the salah of that prescribed time and then do the qadha afterwards. So just say somebody was in a deep sleep, he missed his fajr, and he woke up at Dhuhr time, but he woke up at such a time when it was only, say, 10 minutes or 5 minutes to pray salah. Now, in that situation, if he was to pray his fajr, qadha, he is going to miss his zuhr. So therefore, what he should do in that situation is that he should pray his zuhr salah first, because that is within the time. You don't want to make zuhr qadha as well. And there afterwards, he will then pray the asr. He then goes on to say that if someone is what we call in our common language Sahib Tartib, and Sahib Tartib is basically that individual who has not missed a single prayer. Basically from the moment he matured, the moment he reached the age of puberty until now, he's not missed a single prayer, he's not missed a single namaz. Now for that person, for that Sahib Tartib, the ruling is that he should pray the Qadha namazis first, the Qadha salahs first, before he prays the prayer of that particular time. However, إِلَّا أَن تَزِيدَ الْفَوَائِتُ عَلَى خَمْسِ صَلَوَاتٍ فَيَسْقُطُ التَّرْتِيبُ فِيهَا. Goes on to say that, however, if he, say for example, missed more than 5 prayers, إِلَّا أَن تَزِيدَ الْفَوَائِتُ, if he missed, if he missed more than 5 prayers, then in that situation, it's not necessary for him to do it in order, because the ruling is that he should try to do it in order. So just say if somebody missed Fajr and Dhuhr, and just say he was in a deep sleep, he missed his Fajr prayer, his Dhuhr prayer, he wakes up in Asr, and that, when you look at it nowadays, when it's cold during the winter, it is possible. So if somebody missed his Fajr, if somebody missed his Dhuhr, he wakes up at Asr time, then the ruling is that he should pray his Fajr first and then his Dhuhr. However, it goes on to say that if somebody was to now miss 5 prayers or more, then to do qadha of the 5 prayers in order is not necessary. He could do the qadha in whichever order he wants, and whichever order is easy for him. So that concludes the first section. The next section which we're going to look at, as I explained before, is a very important section in terms of it tells us which times is it considered makruh and disliked to pray salah, and which times it's considered impermissible and haram to pray salah, and also some other types of salah which we are not allowed to do, which we are not allowed to perform during that particular time. Now the first text, Imam Quduuri Rahmatullah goes on to say, لا تجوز الصلاة عند طلوع الشمس ولا عند غروبها إلا عصر يومه, which basically means that salah is not permissible in the طلوع الشمس, at the time of sunrise. So it's haram to pray salah at sunrise, so when the sun is rising. And remember, it doesn't mean that it's only haram to pray salah at sunrise time. So sunrise, say, could be like 8 o'clock. So it doesn't mean that only at 8 o'clock it's haram to pray, but at 8:01 you can start praying your salah. No, sunrise, the sun takes approximately 10 to 15 minutes to rise. So from 8 o'clock all the way up to say 8:15, 8:20, it is haram to pray any form of nafil salah and any form of salah at that particular time. So it says that it is impermissible to pray salah at sunrise time, wala inda gurubiha, and it is also impermissible to pray salah at sunset time, illa asra yawmihi, except for the asr of that particular day. So the asr of that particular day, and I'll explain that in a second. And the third time when it is considered unlawful and haram to pray salah is wala inda qiyamiha fi tuhira, which basically means when the sun has reached its stationary point, then it is unlawful and haram to pray salah at that particular time. Okay, now let me explain this particular text in a bit more detail. So we've already mentioned that to pray salah at sunrise time is unlawful and haram. And it is also impermissible to pray salah at sunset time. Now with regards to sunrise time, I'll just mention one additional ruling here. And that is that if somebody, say for example, started his prayer 1 or 2 minutes before sunrise, and he then completes the prayer whilst the sun is rising, then technically speaking, such a salah would be valid and would be considered done. Let's say, for example, if sunrise time is at 8 o'clock, written in the mosque timetable. So if somebody at 7:58, he begins his fajr, and by the time he finishes, it's 2 past 8, 3 past 8, then that salah would be considered valid and accepted. Now, if you were to ask for my opinion, my humble opinion in this situation is that at 7:58, it's best that you don't start your fajr salah. Because what's mentioned in the masjid timetables, that sunrise is at this time, sunset is this time, it's not 100% accurate. It could be so that at 7:58, the sun is actually rising. Even though in the mosque timetable, it may say that it's not rising yet, it's rising at 8 o'clock. But 7:58, 7:57, it probably may be rising, it probably is rising. So therefore, out of precaution, out of ihtiyat, preferably you don't pray any salah, you don't pray your fajr at that time. If somebody did, then fair enough, as mentioned in the books of fiqh and in the commentaries of certain hadiths, the namaz, the salah would be done. But if you were to ask for my opinion, then I personally say that don't pray salah at that particular time. The third time when it is considered impermissible and haram to pray salah is when the sun is at its stationary point. Now, the sun being at a stationary point, technically speaking, that time is called istiwa'u shams. Technically speaking, that time is called istiwa'u shams and not zawal. Now, a lot of people, or according to the custom, according to the urf, we normally call that time zawal. But technically speaking, that time is not called zawal, but instead it is called istiwa'u shams. And the way to calculate istiwa'u shams is basically halfway from sunrise to sunset. Half of that is istiwa'u shams. And istiwa means when the sun reaches its stationary point, when it reaches its zenith, we call that the istiwa'u shams time. So to pray salah at that particular time is also unlawful and haram. Now there's two times here. One is istiwa'u shams, and then there is another time which I'll just mention now for everyone's benefit, something which we call dahwatul kubra, which normally translates into English as the Islamic midday. Now the way to work out the Islamic midday is halfway from the beginning of Fajr, i.e. Subh Sadiq, and sunset. Half of that is the Islamic midday. So now in the winter, Fajr approximately starts at 6:30, and just say for example 4:30 is sunset. So that is approximately 10 hours. So half of that, i.e. 5 hours, i.e. at 11:30, that's when you have to, that is the Dahwatul Kubra time. That is the Islamic midday time. Now, in terms of salah, there's nothing wrong with it. That obviously you can pray salah before then or at that particular time. But the reason why I'm mentioning it is that this is something which we will look at, in particular when we look at fasting, and in particular making intentions and so on. In particular when it comes to nafil fast, that you should make the intention before the Islamic midday. And also when it comes to fasting in the month of Ramadan, and nadr mu'ayyan, i.e. fasts where, or vows where the time has been specified, then you can either make the intention the night before, or if you want, you can make the intention afterwards, but you'll have to make the intention before the Islamic midday. And generally speaking, this Islamic midday, it tends to be an hour or so before the actual zawal, the actual istiwa'u shams time. Now, going back to the ruling here, so it's telling us that it is unlawful and haram to pray salah at istiwa'u shams time. People call it zawal, where basically when the sun is at its stationary point. Now, the question rises here is that for how long are we not allowed to pray salah when the sun reaches its stationary point? Now, the sun reaching its stationary point is only for a few minutes, but it's difficult to ascertain exactly what time the sun has reached its stationary point. So therefore what we do is 5 minutes before and 5 minutes afterwards, it is unlawful and haram to pray salah at that particular time. So just say, for example, if the sun reaching its stationary point, its zenith, is 12 o'clock, then 5 minutes before, i.e. 11:55 a.m. up to 5 past 12, it will be considered and impermissible to pray any salah. Why? Because the sun is at its stationary point. Now, another ruling which was mentioned here was illa asra yawmihi. Now, what's that trying to say? Now, this particular this particular text is telling us that it is unlawful and haram to pray salah at when the sun is setting, wala inda gurubiha. However, you're allowed to pray asr of that particular day. Now, let me explain this particular ruling and what we mean by when the sun is setting. Now, the sun, it starts setting approximately 20 minutes before the Maghrib time. 20 minutes before Maghrib is when the sun loses its color, its luster, it becomes pale, and one can directly look and see the sun. Now, at that particular time, that's when it becomes makruh tahrimi, that's when it becomes unlawful and haram to pray any salah, to pray any prayers at that particular time. However, the text tells us, and this is mentioned in other classical books of fiqh, that if somebody for some reason hadn't prayed his asr at that time, wallahu alam, just say he either overslept or he was traveling or he had something else to do, and the next thing you know, just say in the winter when Maghrib says at 4 o'clock, so let's say around 3:40ish when the sun is starting to set, it's around 3:45 now, he wants to now pray asr. So in that situation, he will be allowed to pray his asr salah will be done, but it will be considered makruh tahrimi and severely disliked. And severely disliked is understandable. Why? Because he has delayed the Maghrib salah all the way until that particular time. Because of that reason, it will be considered makruh tahrimi and severely disliked. However, if he did pray the asr at that time, his salah would be done. The next text, Imam Quduuri Lesson goes on to say, وَلَا يُصَلِّي عَلَى جَنَازَةٍ وَلَا يَسْجُدُ لِلتِّلَاوَةِ, which means that it is also impermissible during the 3 times, i.e. when the sun is rising, when the sun is setting, when the sun is at a stationary point, to pray any janazah salah and also to perform any sajda tilawah. So to perform sajda tilawah at that time is also impermissible and is also unlawful as well. The next ruling then goes on to say that it is makruh and disliked أن يتنفل بعد صلاة الفجر, to pray nafal after the Fajr Salah until the sun rises, and also after the Asr prayer until the sun sets. A very common ruling, I'm sure everybody is aware of this particular ruling, that after somebody prays his Fajr, so after you pray your Fajr 2 rakats first, obviously 2 rakats sunnah before and then the 2 rakats first, it is makruh tahrimi, severely disliked, to pray any nafil salah, to pray any optional prayer all the way up to sunrise. And the same rule also applies when it comes for the Asr prayer. That when somebody has prayed the 4 rakat Asr Farz, then to pray any optional prayers. And remember, when we talk about optional prayers, it could also include Tahiyatul Masjid, the 2 rakats of Tahiyatul Masjid, even that is makruh tahrimi, Salatul Istikhara, Salatul Haja, basically, or random nafil prayers a person wants to pray, he's not allowed to pray it after after the Fajr and after the Asr until the sun rises or until the sun sets. So it's mentioned وَبَعْدَ صَلَاةِ الْعَصْرِ حَتَّى تَغْرُبَ الشَّمْسِ until the sun sets. However, it then goes and says, وَلَا بَأْسَ بِأَن يُصَلِّيَ فِي هَذَيْنِ الْوَقْتَيْنِ الْفَوَائِدِ. However, after the Fajr Farz or after the Asr Farz, if somebody wants to pray Qadha prayers, Fawaid here means Qadha prayers, then that is considered to be allowed, that is considered to be permissible. The next text or ibara then goes on to say that وَيُكْرَهُ أَن يَتَنَفَّلَ بَعْدَ طُلُوعِ الْفَجْرِ بِأَكْثَرَ مِنْ رَكَعَتَيِ الْفَجْرِ. That it is makruh also to pray any nafil salah during the Fajr time besides the 2 rakats of Fajr Sunnah. Again, this is also another important ruling as well, which some people are unaware of. And that is that after Subh Sadiq is basically when the Fajr time starts. So after Subh Sadiq, after the Fajr time starts, the only Sunnah prayer you're allowed to pray, the only Nafil prayer you're allowed to pray is basically the 2 rakats Fajr Sunnah. Obviously, you have to pray the Fajr 2 rakats first. But in terms of Nafil and optional, the only optional prayer you're allowed to pray, the only Nafil prayer you're allowed to pray, the only Sunnah prayer you're allowed to pray is the 2 rakat Fajr Sunnah. And I'll mention next week when we look at the Nawafil section regarding the importance of the 2 rakats Fajr Sunnah, the very famous hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saying that even though you're in the battlefield and the horses are trampling over you, you should still pray the 2 rakats Fajr Sunnah. So the 2 rakats Fajr Sunnah, that's the only nafil you should pray. But besides that, any other nafil prayer during that time, then that is considered makruh tahrimi, and that is considered disliked. He then goes on to say, the next ibarat, the next text then goes on to say, وَلَا يَتَنَفَّلُ قَبْلَ الْمَغْرِبِ, which means that one should not pray any nafil salah before the Maghrib salah. Now, you may be thinking that isn't this a repeat masla or a repeat ruling, because the ruling here is telling us that we should not pray nafil before Maghrib. So before Maghrib is after Asr, isn't it? So we mentioned before that after Asr you're not allowed to pray nafil salah. So isn't this the same thing? Now it's slightly different here. The ruling here is after the Maghrib Azan. After the Maghrib Azan, i.e. after sunset, and then you have the Maghrib Azan for Maghrib, Imam Quduuri rahmatullahi is saying that وَلَا يَتَنَفَّلْ, one should not pray any nafil salah, one should not pray any optional prayers at that particular time. Now this leads to a masla here with regards to, is there any nafil prayer, is there any sunnah prayer before Maghrib? If there isn't, then the common question which people ask me is, then why is it that when we go to the Haram, we see that after the Maghrib Azan, people standing up, they pray 2 rakat nafil, and then the Jamaat and the congregation for Maghrib takes place. I'll just explain what the other Imams say with regards to this ruling and masla. According to Imam Nawawi rahmatullah alayh, Shafi scholar, he's of the view that it is mustahab and desirable that one prays 2 rakats after the Maghrib Azan. The second opinion, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik rahmatullah of the view that it is makruh to pray 2 rakats after the Maghrib Azan before the Maghrib Jamaat and the congregation. Now, Mufti Taqi Usmani Damat Barakatuhum, in his Dars Tirmizi, which is a commentary of Sunan Tirmizi, has mentioned that the Hanafi interpretation regarding this particular ruling, and in particular the hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari where it says بَيْنَ كُلِّ آذَانَيْنِ صَلَاةٌ لِمَنْ شَاءَ, which means that between 2 azans there is salah for that person who wants. The Hanafi interpretation or reply or response to that particular hadith is quite da'if and is quite weak. But we do say that it is preferable not to pray 2 rakats after the Maghrib Azan before the Maghrib Jamaat. Why? Because number one, there are many ahadith which talks about the virtues and the importance of praying the Maghrib Salah ASAP as soon as possible. And also many Sahabas and many companions would pray the Maghrib Salah as soon as possible. However, at the same time, if, say, for example, if the opportunity is being given to you to pray the 2 rakat nafil salah, then again, in my humble opinion, one should not waste his time, but instead he should pray the 2 rakat nafil salah and then pray the Maghrib salah with Jamaat, with congregation. And what I'm trying to say is that, just say for example in the Haram, where the Maghrib Azan is given and they are giving you the opportunity to pray the 2 rakat nafil salah. Now in that situation, you should not just look around, play with your mobile phone, play with your thumbs, play with your fingers and so on, but you have been given the opportunity to pray the 2 rakat nafil. And obviously everybody knows about the immense reward of praying salah, even nafil salah, in the Haram, in Makkah and in Medina Munawwara. So therefore, instead of looking around, instead of taking a sip from your Zamzam water, from your Zamzam bottle, what you should do in that situation is actually you should pray the 2 rakat nafil salah, and you get the reward and you get the sawab for that. So what I'm trying to say is that it's preferable that in most situations that you don't pray. However, where the situation is being presented to you, like in the Haram or in any other masajids where, a Shafi masjid, say for example, or a Hanbali masjid, where after the Maghrib Azan, everybody else is standing up and praying 2 rakat nafil, you should also do the same. You should pray the 2 rakat nafil and then join the Jamaat or join the congregation for the 2 rakat, for the Maghrib Salah, and then pray the Maghrib Jamaat with the congregation. So that concludes this particular section with regards to the times when it is considered haram and impermissible and makruh to pray salah. May Allah give us the tawfiq to act on as has been said. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin.